Hey, what's going on? It's Gabe Henderson here from Our Storylines Media. I simply wanted to stop by to say before you watch this interview, feel free to hit that subscribe button and follow Our Storylines and the Our Storylines podcast on social media for more interviews like this.
Fighting is an expression, and it allows you to release that tension, allows you to open those valves on the pressure, allows you to let that steam out in a positive way and control it. If you're a wild, loose cannon, you can be wound up easily, or somebody could say something to you and you fly off the handle, you can get your beat. A calm, happy fighter is the most successful. And so while you learn the skill and the trade of boxing as a professional and the pugilist science, you learn to control your emotions. You learn to find happiness in it. You find a way to release that tension, that pressure before the first bell rings. And that is where life and boxing might meet, where you can find things in the ring that will help you in the combat of life.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of the Our Storylines podcast. As always, I am your host, Gabe Henderson, and if you know me, clearly you know that I am a huge boxing fan, but I also love me some stand-up comedy. Well, our guest today checks both of those boxes. Not only has he been covering the sport of boxing for over 2 decades, he's also produced a hit HBO special called Salute Me or Shoot Me by Sam J. His name is Radio Rahim. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm excited to have you on the show, my man.
Gabe, I am so happy to be on your show, man. I've seen you working so hard over the last many years. Every time I come to Minneapolis and you're on the grind, you know, I'm always watching people, especially in executive spaces, working where we don't expect to be seen and having responsibility. You're always doing it. You're always on the edge of something out there. So congratulations to you. I love that you now have a space where you can express yourself and talk to the many people with whom you have connections and share your story, hear theirs. This is what you should be doing, brother. So I'm happy to be on the show. I'm honored to be invited. I can't wait to have this conversation.
Well, before I talk about where we first met, I got to set the scene for our listeners. Right now, you're in the UK. You and I have spent some time together in the UK in the past, but you're in the heart of Brixton. Why are you there? Walk us through where you are right now.
Listen, I'm in Brixton right now, which indeed geographically on the map will be placed in London, but this is South Side. So it's like, you know,
Got it.
you could be in New York State or you could be in Brooklyn. It's like that, right? This place actually is, a lot of people make a connection between Brixton and Harlem because they do have a very similar vibe. There's a prominent Jamaican presence here as a result of the Windrush, which was like an influx of Jamaican people and cultures. There's a lot of Africans here. There's so much rich history in the south of London. So I found this place that made me think so much of the Oakland that I grew up in, actually on the West Coast, North California, that because I work in the United Kingdom so often, and I've been covering boxing in the kingdom since at least over a decade, just on this side of the pond, not to mention the broad breadth of my entire career, but I've been over here covering these fights for over a decade. And so back and forth constantly, multiple times a year for weeks at a time. And this past year and a half, I decided that because boxing really had begun to focus and center here, so many more fights are here than were in Vegas and New York, that I just made the move. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel as inspired about living on this side of the pond if it weren't for Brixton. So not only am I in South London, I'm in Brixton, and I happen to be at the Brixton Streetwear shop in Brixton Village. That's how much of the B I'm representing right now. Because again, this is another local business that is built on the culture here. Everybody stops by this shop and, gets a little something, even if it's just good energy and a fun conversation. They welcome me. They were one of the first businesses to welcome me when I came through the village. So these guys and the culture around this space makes me feel at home and energized. So I'm a resident, as much as I can be on this side of the pond, but in this community in particular.
Let's start at where we first met. So it's funny you brought up Minneapolis when you were talking about, you like how I'm starting to grow and evolve here. the first time I met you was the day after I went to Minneapolis for the first time ever in my life. So I was living in DC at the time, and ultimately I was going to Baked and Wired, a cupcake shop
Yeah.
out of
Oh,
all
that's right.
places. And at that cupcake shop, I remember looking out the window and I was like, hold on, is that Dave Chappelle? And then I look, said what's up, and I looked to my right and I was like, is that Radio Rahim? Like, and then we started talking about boxing and so on and so forth. You were in town in DC. Dave Chappelle was accepting the Mark Twain Prize for American humor. And we just so happened to connect there. We started talking boxing, but I vividly remember us talking about Errol Spence. He was just starting to get going, and this was before the car accident and so on and so forth. But following your boxing career and having that innate ability, like, how does boxing and comedy come together for you?
Well, they come together because they're both something that I have passion about, that I love. I find it to be a part of my spirit. My mother was playing Richard Pryor records when I was an adolescent, way younger than any CPS would have advised. So, it is also a part of my personal connection between the two being that I'm not a boxer. I'm a presenter of boxing. I'm a broadcast journalist and I speak for a living. So the way comedians are wordsmiths and narrate and find stories and then humor inside of stories and keep your attention even when they're not punchline after punchline, the really good ones can draw you in and keep you on the edge of your seat and reel you in and then let it go with a big laugh and then reel you back in. There is a magic about that. There is a skill and an art form to just that. And because I love the sport of boxing, but my place in it as an orator, it is a necessity for me to tell the stories of fighters who are not skilled necessarily at telling it for themselves. They're in there competing and their focus is being an artist in the ring. So I want to be able to paint a picture for those who are consuming the sport. So learning the different techniques that comedians use to express themselves and understanding how you can connect with an audience and bring an audience along for a journey. That's something that comedians, the good ones, are able to do seamlessly. That's something that I incorporate in the way that I broadcast journalism. And for the sake of the fighter, I believe that boxing is really about overcoming the fight in you first. You have to overcome a certain amount of adversity, doubt, pain, just to climb through those ropes and have an opponent across from you. Before that guy throws his first punch at you, you got to be able to take the ones that are internally knocking you down and stand up when you don't believe and get through things that you think are too hard. All of that is something that you have to do when you're on stage as a comedian. I've never competed as a boxer. I've sparred and such like that, but that is not the same. I've never taken the stage as a comedian. However, you tell jokes with your friends and one-liners and keep the conversation going. That is not the same. So I marvel at both of these art forms really and what it requires to overcome if you're a comedian fear of being up there alone and will all these people come along with me? Am I funny? Will they laugh? Will they not laugh? If they don't laugh, what will I do? Is what is going on in my mind and my perspective something that's worth hearing? All that kind of thing is what is internally struggle that they have to overcome and they're fighting while they're on stage. And the fighter, while it looks like the opponent is the biggest thing that he has to overcome, like I said, a lot of times it's what's happening in his own mind. Hey, can I take another punch? Do I have the energy to do this? Do I have the confidence to throw my next punch? These things are all happening at the same time while we're watching what they make look easy. So that to me is a marvel. And I have the blessing of having a microphone to be able to narrate the story of these fighters and bring to life the art form that I see. And then also work with these incredible comedians and help bring to life the art form that they toil at night after night and have spent years, if not decades, or their entire adult lives honing. So, as a producer, as you mentioned, for Sam J, this last special, Salute Me or Shoot Me, was really like something that is close to my heart. It was uh, an experience that I can't even give you the accurate emotion that it feels when you watch someone like Sam, who's gone through so much, who has on her journey, able to deliver something she's proud of and express herself in the way that she worked so hard to put together. So just being a part of that team and having something to do with bringing that to the audience is, an honor and a gift. And it's something that I will always cherish and thank her for trusting me to have the role that I did have in it.
That's so dope, man. And being with you and Sam when y'all were in Minneapolis and, showing you guys around and really being ingrained into, the true art. That kind of brings me to my next point of boxing. I said this on this podcast. I've said this to numerous people. I think boxing is one of the only sports that is a true synopsis of life. And to your point of getting punched in the face or trying to block a punch or fighting that inner person, that's something that we have to do on a daily basis and ultimately makes us more purposeful in our actions as we move forward. But when you think about your purpose, you talked about storytelling a lot. Why storytelling for you?
Everybody's got a story, and I have a microphone. I would be remiss if I didn't tell them. I have my own story, and sometimes people such as yourself find it interesting enough to question me about, and I get to express myself. But that's not my job. That's my life. And if I'm willing to share it with somebody, then it's because I have a connection with them. It's not like I just do this every day to hear myself talk. I have a connection with you. I respect you. I want to have a conversation with you. So I'm willing to be a bit more open about myself with you. But my job and my passion is to tell other people's stories, to find the narrative inside of the work that is being done by these fighters, and in a producer's role, comedians alike. And so what I'm able to do to illuminate and to give more context for or to give dimension to a person who sometimes seems one dimensional in an athlete, or being able to help someone express their own voice in the instance of a comic who is already very skilled at telling, narrating their own stories and setting up jokes and putting punchlines down. But then we start to shape it and make sure that what they want to communicate is coming through and that it's precise enough to compete in the stand-up television market. Like, everything is a competition, and people want to do their best. And as much as it is an art form, it is also a performance, and you want to be at your absolute top. I want the people whom I cover in boxing to connect with their audience, and I want the comedians with whom I produce their vision to connect with the audience so the audience can better understand what they're expressing and experience whatever the comedian wants to impart to the audience.
How does one get radio in front of his first name? And I ask that because when I first started watching you on YouTube, I was like, when I think of Radio Rahim, I think of Do the Right Thing, the Spike Lee movie, the guy with the radio in his hand. So for you, like, how does Rahim become Radio Rahim?
Well, I'm an only child, so my parents got it right the first time. What that meant is I didn't have a lot of company in the house. And I grew up in an era where terrestrial radio was the thing. Instagram wasn't around yet, YouTube wasn't a thing yet, and people were listening to radio DJs talking or playing music, and you would dedicate songs they would have. And this still happens, of course, but there's a lot more options now than there used to be. And so radio at this time was what everybody was listening to on their drive. And when I'm home after school on my own, I'm listening to DJs. And so I would like to call them up and talk to them, whatever whether it's dedicating a song or answering trivia questions or any reason I could get on the air, I would, so that I could hear my voice through the speaker. When I grew up, it was you. If you grew up when I grew up, you remember the first time you heard your own voice. I don't think this current generation will ever remember the first time they heard their own voice. For us, it would be like the first time looking in a mirror. You don't remember the first time you looked in a mirror, but I remember distinctly the first time I heard my voice recorded, and I was mortified. I could not believe that was me. I thought I sounded so much cooler. I thought I sounded like, you know what I mean? Like Grease, like John Travolta, or like I thought that I had a smooth, silky, Eddie Murphy smooth kind of, voice, and that was not the case, man. I was also incredibly young. Like I thought these people sounded cool.
Listening back to yourself humbles yourself very quickly.
Yeah, but now it does. I hear people all day and all night on the social media just screeching these terrible voices they don't even know that they have terrible voices. There's no standard anymore. Anybody can be heard, which is crazy. But in my day, they used to have to earn a microphone. So once I realized that I sounded horrific, then wanted to figure out how to make my voice sound cooler, which is I was listening to comedians, ironically, and understanding how the inflection in their voice made them sound cool and made them engaging. And I would call up radio stations and talk to the DJ and slowly kind of create a voice that sounded cool to me. And now I really don't know what my voice would sound like if I hadn't had that experience. I'm not sure that this is my actual voice. It is my voice, as I'm not putting any conscious effort into sounding this way, but I ingrained it in myself so young that this whole shit might be made up. I really don't know if this is what Radio Rahim is meant to sound like. But because I enjoy the sound of my own voice so much, and I do, it's got to be a pleasurable noise. And that might be another reason why I would make my living on the microphone, because you know what? When I hear me, I like what I hear.
You know how much confidence it takes to say that? Like, not a lot of people have that confidence to say, like, I like my voice. Like, yes. I like what I hear when I turn on a microphone and I hear it back after I play it. Like, that takes a ton of confidence. But honestly, that confidence is why you're where you are right now.
There's a thin line between confidence and delusion, and I ice skate on it daily.
Hey, I think we all do to some point. I mean, if you don't have a little bit of a delusion in you, like, are you really aiming towards greatness? And
do you even care?
Do you even care? One thing I've really cared about when it comes to your career is the fact that you don't back down to quote unquote gladiators. A lot of people know you as the till this day guy, the Deontay Wilder clip.
Radio Rahim, I don't have to explain what's understood, man. You know what I mean by that. You know what I say about that. I ain't got to go further. You know what I'm talking about, man. You know what I dare you to sit up there and say is explain. You know what I'm talking about, man. He's fighting people. You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day.
When looking at that interview, I feel like if you look back at other interviews, like, you really are a perfectionist or really someone that cares about the craft. And it doesn't really matter if someone gets mad or gets happy or engaged or less engaged. You're just there to inform. So when it comes to informing and being who you are and having that confidence, like, how were you able to kind of build that to get to where you are right now?
The truth is, it seems like sometimes that I am going after people, or I'm looking to get a rise out of somebody, or I'm asking a tough question to be none of those things are true. I'm having a conversation always, and I hope to have one that is real. So sometimes in a real conversation, uncomfortable issues come up. In a real conversation, you don't hold your tongue if you're talking to a friend. And I consider including Deontay Wilder at the time, during, and post a friend, and who is entrusting me with, as we just spoke about, in a way telling his story, but really giving a more contextual idea of who he is, a more dimensional view of this often thought of as a one-dimensional individual. I know these guys are complex. I know that there's a lot going on in their lives in addition to whatever fight we're all talking about. I know a lot of what has transpired to bring them to where they are because I covered it. And I'm looking deeper than who won on Saturday night and what the latest soundbite is. And I want them to have an opportunity to express themselves more fully and be more humanized. And so whatever it is that is on their heart is what I'm getting at. And sometimes I'll push on it if I think that the door is squeaky but open. So, that is a matter of balance and measuring yourself. And you learn that over time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it gets the heavyweight champion of the world screaming in your face.
Till this day. Like, when it comes to boxers, like, how they answer questions reminds me of football players, because everything seems kind of scripted. Like Floyd Mayweather, probably my favorite boxer of all time. I got into boxing because of him. The first fight I ever saw of his was that I watched completely was the the welterweight championship against Sugar Shane Mosley back in the day. And that just like gave me my love for boxing. I just started watching it since. But he's one person that kind of helped other boxers have a PR way of talking. And when it comes to football, it's so tough to get that out. But boxing, I feel like all you got to do is just continue to find creative ways to get in, and then ultimately they'll crack. Why do you think that is the case when it comes to boxers?
Well, that's interesting. That's a bit, I would say, that's a bit of gamesmanship on Mayweather's part because he can go either way with it. And to your point, which is an interesting observation, but to your point, if he thinks that the audience is not respecting the opponent, he talks the opponent up so that when he beats the opponent, he can get the credit. And then when he's facing an opponent that he respects, who he knows is presenting a challenge, he talks down on the opponent because everybody else is talking the opponent up, and he wants to dismiss anyone who puts somebody on the same level as him. So that's what you're watching. So with that said, I think fighters don't need to be as articulate as some other athletes. It is marketable if you're likable. It's also marketable if you're not likable. It isn't a benefit for fighters to be particularly emotional or aggressive or angry. An angry fighter is often not a good fighter. Fighting is an expression, and it allows you to release that tension, allows you to open those valves on the pressure, allows you to let that steam out in a positive way and control it. If you're a wild, loose cannon, you can be wound up easily, or somebody can say something to you and you fly off the handle, you can get your beat. A calm, happy fighter is the most successful. And so while you learn the skill and the trade of boxing as a professional and the pugilist science, you learn to control your emotions. You learn to find happiness in it. You find a way to release that tension, that pressure before the first bell rings. And that is where life and boxing might meet, where you can find things in the ring that will help you in the combat of life.
Dude, that's a great transition to when people see these boxers, the casual fans, all they see are the bright lights and the prize fights, and they forget that there's a lot of sparring and there's a lot of training that goes into getting to that point. And that's kind of how your career started. Wildcard Gym, filming sparring videos and just trying to find opportunities to pay for your rent and ultimately get to the point where you want to get. Like, what were those mental sparring sessions like for you? Not the physical ones that you filmed, but the mental ones that you had to do for yourself to get to the point where you always thought that you should be.
I was young. I was a teenager in Wildcard. I was just really finding a way to share with the world what I was seeing and marveling at on a day-to-day basis. The world was watching these guys on Saturday nights on HBO or Prime networks competing in front of the hot lights for world championships. And they, again, were looking at them in one dimension. I was seeing these guys in the gym every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, sparring for round after round after round. Every Tuesday and Thursday on top of that, training tirelessly. I was getting to know them personally. And there was something that wasn't being conveyed professionally on those screens. And so what I was giving you was like a peek into what I was seeing. And that's why it was called Gym Wars, because that's not the same as boxing matches. And they were showing me a side of the sport that I was becoming familiar with, but then also making me understand that the very heroes I grew up with watching football and baseball and basketball, that, oh man, those guys are human. I'm a young man too. I'm realizing that it's not all just lights and money and fast cars and women, that there is a lot that goes into being successful at anything, but certainly as an athlete, and that these people have multi-faceted lives and are very different personalities sometimes than what you see on television. And there's a lot more to every individual than what is being promoted or sold. So that's where that initially came from. It wasn't that I felt I deserved something even on the end of that. Like I was doing something that I then deserved to get something for. I was doing something because I loved it. And if I was getting anything out of it, it was the love of other people for the same thing that I loved. And I could get to talk to more people about it. And I would bring people to the sport and let them see a side of it that was intriguing to me. The payoff beyond that is all icing on the cake.
How much did it, during those transitions, how much did discipline inform your craft?
Discipline is the key to the whole thing. It is discipline encompasses it. It's discipline. It is humility. It is ambition. It is vision. It is overcoming the things you want to do right now so that you can produce the thing you want to do forever. And there are multiple things that will draw your attention away, that will convince you to skip a day, that will allow you to rationalize giving a half effort, that will talk you down negatively about what you're able to do and at what level you're doing it, that will try to whisper envious or jealous thoughts into your mind about other people who are doing what you're doing and maybe getting more out of it or seeming to get more out of it or being paid more or getting more attention. There's so many things you have to discipline yourself to do and not do, to focus on and make sure you do not be distracted by. Discipline is the cornerstone, I believe, of success in life. And certainly if you are achieving a very specific goal, you have to be focused on it, meanwhile maintaining balance. Convincing yourself that 100% focus on this one goal and damn everything else, that is discipline, but that is not balance. And that is discipline out of balance, which is something you need discipline to get in balance. So you are denying yourself a certain amount of accomplishment by not being balanced with your discipline, which, it sounds like I'm giving you a riddle right now, but that is a part of discipline.
No,
is making sure that you are not obsessed and allowing other things to wither on the vine and neglect the important things in your life so that you can achieve this goal. And that is always a very hard balance to strike. You're learning how to do that day to day as situations change and the more demand from either your personal life or your professional life or what you need to do to have more repetitions to get better versus the things you need to do to stay healthy. All of that is part of discipline.
This question may be deep because you've talked about a lot about discipline and ambition and driving and overcoming, and rightfully so. But when it comes to, and I feel like all this kind of entails, like I feel like we're talking life, comedy, boxing, storytelling, like all of it kind of comes into one thing. But along the way, I feel like those lessons of adversity is what keeps us going. But everyone has a different definition of failure or adversity. So for you and your journey, how would you define failure?
To stop the journey. As long as you're keeping it moving, you haven't failed. I hate to make it short. And
that's fair.
If you're taking another step forward, you have staved off failure yet again.
So what keeps you going? What keeps you moving forward? Because I think you've proven yourself in your career. Like you are a pioneer when it comes to streaming boxing, or at least putting boxing clips or sparring or whatever, even training on YouTube, and everyone has kind of followed suit. Like people can call me crazy for that, but I've seen you just grind and I've heard your story. So what keeps you moving forward after all you've done to this point or till this day?
And that is true. It's not a matter of opinion. The truth is that as YouTube became a way of people seeing what's happening in real time and seeing video outside of websites, I was there. When it was just websites and there was no YouTube, I was there. When people were following boxing through writers and not video, I began creating video content of fighters. And then I expanded the sparring sessions to interviews. I would interview them before and after the sparring session. Then I would go to fights and interview fighters before and after the fight on camera and put them on the line and create journalism that was online journalism for boxing. That just wasn't how boxing journalism was consumed before I did it. If that makes me a pioneer, then I'm happy to wear that title, and I'm not Uh, I'm not shy about it because it's a vision that now has become an industry. And that's a beautiful thing. People have taken that and said, I can do that. I got a camera. I got my, as the internet grew and the world got smaller and people were able to create content themselves and find these devices and platforms that would host their content, and it kept expanding. Now, what I see and what you're commenting on is no one thinks about where it began. And I'm not asking that of the boxing community necessarily for some accolade, but when I see it, I am eternally pleased. So I'm happy that I had something to do with bringing these stories to life. And now I have countless storytellers out there who are bringing it from their own perspective and asking their own questions and creating their own style of content and covering the boxing world at large. Like, I was only able to cover what I was able to cover geographically when I was in LA and, Vegas, and I was, primarily on the West Coast at that time. There weren't even really many fights in New York because they couldn't get the license through insurance to have boxing matches in New York. So most of the fights were either in Vegas or LA. That was the heyday in the places where it was happening then. So the fact that now I live, in the United Kingdom, I am covering boxing here more than anywhere else because this is where it is. That just tells you how the evolution of life and this sport coincide. But I'm here because I'm still in perpetual motion. And you say, how do I not slow down, or how do I keep going? Because a person in motion stays in motion. This is what I've been doing, and I'm willing to go where I have to go to do it. And so that's why I'm here. And I have the great joy of finding a community like Brixton where I can be happy and see a community flourishing and be a part of that and be welcomed into it and make it a part of my experience that I bring to the storytelling that I do.
Is the travel still fun?
Listen, if I'm anywhere for more than 3 weeks at a time, I get cabin fever. I am conditioned. It's like, for me, that is like, me going to the airport is like you walking to your car. You getting on the freeway is me getting on a flight. I don't mean you specifically, but general people that don't have to travel that much. It's not. It's what I. So for me to be in a city for 3 weeks is what it would be like for you to be locked in your room for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I remember when we got up in London, you were like, yeah, I just got back from, I don't know if it was like Australia or Switzerland, and I'm in London, and I go back to New York, and then I'm here. I mean, before we had this conversation, when I texted you a couple of weeks ago, you were like, hey, let's do this when I get back from Ghana. And I'm like, dude, you're in the motherland now, you're in Brixton. Like, what does that do for you? I mean, like, what does a place like Ghana do for you when going to Brixton and then going to America? Like, what do you learn from cultures?
It fills my heart with joy. It brings inspiration. It gives you energy to reconnect. It's like plugging into a socket of the best energy you could imagine. It's the first time I got to experience the continent, and I was in a place that I like to call the door, because you can go to the continent anywhere and find connection. I believe anybody, and that is of any nationality or race, because I believe it all started there. But for those of us are disconnected from it intentionally based on our American history, I think there's a special energy you get the first time you go back. I think it is a special kind of connection that you have because it hasn't been fostered throughout your life, and it hasn't been fed, and you are seeing people who look like you in a different way than just like your skin color, but you see people who look like people that you grew up with. He's not them, but damn, that looks like his twin brother. You know what I mean? And he's 100% African, doesn't even speak English, but boy, that looks exactly like my college roommate or something. You know what I mean? It's like a weird thing to see. And then you have certain mannerisms and certain likes and dislikes and way you just move and swag, and you see it in them. You're like, did they get that from us, or did we get that from them? Like, what?
Yeah.
There's a a evolution of spirit that is necessary. And you should have that experience no matter where your roots lead, follow them because there's something there to be gained. And it's expansive. It makes me feel bigger. Makes me feel like I carry a bigger energy with me. It reminds me of my purpose. And if anything, I hope that just like at the beginning of my career, I wanted people to experience what I was seeing inside the gym that I wasn't seeing reflected on the night on television of these fighters. I want people to experience what I'm seeing on the continent of Africa and what I experienced in Ghana that I'm not seeing reflected on social media or in conversations with my peers and Black Americans. I want to give them that window. And I just
I
want to
love
give them
that,
the
man.
window so they walk through the door. Don't take my
Yeah.
experience and be like, oh, I get it. No, I just want to give you enough to make you understand that you need to go get it for yourself.
That's awesome, man. It somewhat reminds me of one of your good friends and the story that he told about how being in Africa really motivated him to really get in touch with his roots. And when I'm talking about your friend, this is a guy that many people know. His name is Dave Chappelle, and you guys have spent a great amount of time together. And thinking of who Dave is as a person and what makes him unique, what does he mean to you in your life?
It's like having a friend. He's just like, it's a friend. And he's a wise person. He has unique experiences.
Yeah.
He's a generous guy. He's willing to impart the wisdom that he has on you. He's willing to receive the wisdom that you have. If you're in a conversation, it's an exchange of ideas, not a diminishing uh, exchange of nonsense. And sometimes it's like any other friend, you get silly, but there's always value in spending time with people who are elevated and who hope to elevate others, whether it be a close friend that they know or a vast audience of people they don't know. That is a unique spirit that is inclined to elevate those around him and express himself in a way that inspires others. So it's a great friendship. It's a kind of thing that everybody has, and you gravitate to the people who feed you what you need. So that's the kind of thing that I need. That's the kind of friends that I want, and he's a great one.
Two more questions for you. What about a boxer's mindset inspires you?
Every boxer doesn't have the same mindset. And what they bring to the ring will be tested. That mindset will be tested. And I've seen many, many different mindsets succeed. But one that will not ever succeed is one that does not have the fighting spirit. You got to have the spirit of a warrior. That means that you are willing to overcome adversity before you get in the ring. So the mindset is to achieve, to overcome, to have in your thought process a goal that nobody will stop you from accomplishing, to have a will that overcomes. The way it is expressed, the way you set your mind to do that varies. But ultimately, that's what you got to do.
All right, so the name of the show is called Our Storylines. And when you think about just your journey up until this point and so on and so forth, like what would be just your personal storyline for your life?
I don't know. Someone else will have to tell that story. I'm still writing it. There's no, my story doesn't have a straight line. I think I am visited in moments by fate. I don't determine on my own what happens next. As I said earlier, I just keep going. And then what steps into my path, I engage and deal with accordingly to what energy it brings. And it's sure, I have ambitions and I have goals I set for myself and things I visualize for me. But over the course of life, what I been forced to understand, sometimes happily and sometimes against my will, is that we are not 100% in control of everything. And the way you might have imagined you're going to get someplace may not be your path there, may not be the destination that is set for you, may be something much more than you had even asked for from the universe. And it gives you what you need when you need it. So I just keep trying to produce and do what I feel is authentic and make constant motion forward, and at least that's the direction I hope I'm going, and accept what comes in my path and keep going to get more of what I believe feeds me well. And so the way those things have manifested, oftentimes I could not predict, but ends up being exactly what I needed at the time. And this interview, what we're doing right now, clearly, because I'm doing it, is what I need at the time. And I hope that in this time, I'm giving you something that you need. And then those people who have decided to listen to us for whatever reason are getting what they need. When this show is over, we all continue that exact same process individually, but collectively by definition, right? That's the story.
Yep. That's real. That's real. All we can do is continue to pick up those pieces, move forward, and ultimately, to your point, hopefully we're going in the right direction. And the direction that our paths have gone helps us intercede at this point, and I'm sure we're going to see each other here in the near future and just continue to push the memo forward. And for me, continue to inspire the next generation of storytellers. So, Radio, always a pleasure talking to you, my man.
Always a pleasure, man. Good luck with the show. Thanks for including me, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, boss. Hey, it's Gabe Henderson here from Our Storylines Media. Simply wanted to say thank you all for tuning into the latest edition of the Our Storylines podcast. If you enjoyed it, feel free to hit that subscribe button and make sure you follow us on social media and wherever you stream your podcast.